Welcome to another episode of The Next Generation. Guys, I am so excited for today's guest. I have Sierra Jepsen on with me, and Sierra grew up on a grain and cow-calf operation within the rural farming community of Armada, Ohio. And now she lives and resides in Livingston, Montana. Sierra enjoys helping from afar with her family's freezer beef business. Sierra's passion for meat science was realized during her undergraduate career at Ohio State University. She held a variety of internships, served on the 2014 National Beef Ambassador team, competed at the 2016 Ohio State Meat Judging team, worked in the meat lab, and co-founded the Ohio Collegiate Cattle Association and Buckeyes for Beef program. From 2017 to 2021, Sierra coached collegiate meat judging teams at the University of Wyoming and managed the Cowboy Branded Meats program. Multiple accounts from small meat processors struggle to find and retain skilled labor, encouraged to. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to restart that. I keep on restart. Sorry. Welcome to another episode of The Next Generation. Guys, today I have on Sierra Jepsen, and I am so excited for this conversation with Sierra today. Sierra is a well-versed butcher and just meat science connoisseur within the industry. She owns and operates Butcher Solutions LLC, which provides amazing training tools, all the knowledge to small meat processors across the country. Sierra grew up in a rural farming community in Armada, Ohio, and now resides in Livingston, Montana. So I'm so excited to have Sierra on today and just talk more about her business and just her journey and all about meat science, something that maybe we don't talk about all the time, but meat science can be really fun. So
Thank
Sierra,
you. Yes,
I will
and
let you
Lauren,
take
you
it
are
away.
so right. Meat science can be fun. And it's crazy. I grew up in a cattle community on a beef cattle farm, and I wanted to be connected to the beef cattle community moving forward in my career. I knew that from a very young age. I was a beef queen growing up. I served, on a beef, beef ambassador teams in Ohio and for the national level. And so I loved just the beef cattle community, livestock community as a whole. My sister and I, we were the only two daughters on our family farm. So our parents wanted 6 boys. They got 2 girls. So we're worth 3 apiece. And my sister still farms with my dad full time back in Ohio. Corn, wheat, soybeans, the whole Midwestern gamut. My mom teaches agricultural safety at Ohio State. So a very agricultural oriented family. And when I was trying to find my niche in agriculture and specifically within the beef world, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be the person who is raising the cattle every single day, the way that my dad and my sister love to. I certainly had some internships working with certified Angus beef, which would be the marketing side. I had an internship ranching in Montana, and that was the live side. But I knew it's like, okay, if I can have a lot of exposure to the beef community and just the livestock industry as a whole, I'll eventually find where my fit is and what best combines my combination of wanting to work with the public and bridge that gap to the customer and the consumer, but also still be working with the people who are raising the critters every single day. And it wasn't until my first senior year in college at Ohio State when I found meat science and all the pieces clicked together. And it was a happy mistake that I found meat science because I was actually an agricultural business major, so not animal science major. That was my minor. And so I couldn't get into the beef production class that you had to be a senior to take because that wasn't my major. And so by the time it was time for me to take that beef production class, the course was full. And so I had waited all 4 years to finally take beef production, and the class was full. And so I decided, well, I guess beef, cattle, meat science, that's kind of the same thing, not the same thing. But by the second day of that meat science class, I realized that the perfect way to connect what the livestock producer is doing with what the consumer is seeing on their plate or wanting to purchase is to be the butcher. And, I never realized how exciting meat science could be until that class. And I was enamored with the history of the meat science industry. And I got to buy knives instead of books, and I got to work with my hands. And I was fascinated by all the scientific names of muscles, and how cool it was to actually work on the harvest floor and then to break down these beef, pork, lamb carcasses. And it was the coolest thing I had ever experienced. And it was all just because of a happy little mistake. And so then from there and from that class, I knew that meat science was where I was going to fit in the agricultural and that cattle community and that conversation. And I knew that I wanted to dive deeper into meat science. I wanted to eventually pursue a master's degree, and so it really all spiraled from that first course that I took in meat science way back in 2016.
It's crazy how a happy little mistake of not even really wanting to take the course in the first place inspired an entire business and really transformed the
Yeah.
rest of your livelihood. Because, yeah, an ag business degree is very different than a meat science degree. You almost would have thought that, like, hey, like, I'm going to just go into meat science. But I'm sure having your ag business degree background has really helped with the growth of your personal business now. So I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of the
Mhm.
birth of your personal business and what
Yeah.
Butcher Solutions does
Yep.
and
So
all of
Butcher
those things.
Solutions is first and foremost a traveling butcher school. So although I live in Montana, I travel the country and train butchers. I also educate anyone and everyone on meat science education, which a lot of times ends up being our livestock producers and the folks that they work with. And so, yes, hands on butcher training is kind of my bread and butter, wanting to train folks, whether they are backyard butchers. And I've just recently this year I trained two gentlemen in Arizona who wanted to learn how to harvest their own cattle in their backyard, all the way up to that same month I was working in Kentucky with a fairly large meat processing plant that was just getting started. They had 22 butchers that were fresh in the meat science world. They were coming from working in a Toyota manufacturing plant and a Nestle plant. So they never held a knife before, and they were going to be expected to break down full carcasses and set a retail case by that following Friday. So anything and everything training butchers is really wonderful, fun, exciting for me. But yeah, again, meat science education is something that we often don't think about. And the premise of Butcher Solutions is that we don't need a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD to really get excited about the meat industry. There are a lot of folks who may just want to be a craft butcher, or to know a little bit more about their meat products, or how to build a branded meats program. If I'm raising the livestock and I want to direct market beef, pork, lamb, poultry, anything to the consumers in my community. And so I am here to kind of just provide that meat science education, whatever level people are looking for. So if you are interested in knowing all of the scientific names of every muscle that's in a beef carcass, I can't wait to work with you. If you're just looking to maybe be a better hunter and know a little bit more about what cuts you're getting off of your deer, your elk, your moose every year, and how to go further than just calling them a forequarter steak or a hindquarter steak, or what goes into a humane slaughter. Anything and everything meat science education is where I'm at. And the whole point of Butcher Solution being a traveling butcher school is that I don't own brick and mortar. I also don't own a mobile slaughter unit. It is intended to work with folks in the facility or the space that they have. And so if I'm working with a butcher who has an older facility that was built in like the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, they're going to have a facility that has certain quirks to it. And sometimes if they're looking to train their butchers, sending them to a really pristine facility or a university where everything's going to go right every single time, well, that doesn't happen either. But this a really pristine facility, That doesn't always work right, because when they get home, they're like, crap, how do I make this work for our facility? Likewise, if I'm training a butcher in a facility that's brand spanking new, their rail systems might not be set up yet, and they might not know, what's the best, where should we put the bandsaw, and what's the flow that's going to make our processing floor the most efficient, and how many people do I need working in this specific area, and then I can delegate other people in other places. And so it could even be folks that, again, want to do that backyard butchery, and they might say, it's like, okay, I don't have a pristine facility. It's like, no worries. We can make a concrete pad and a couple tables and a bucket work for you too. And so just meeting people where they are at with the facilities they have, having as little loss of production time, so people don't have to walk away from their jobs and their lives to get training in meat science. They don't have to be gone for lengthy periods of time. Whether we are training one person or 20 people, it's a very similar process, and I can cater that meat science education to fit where they are at.
That is awesome. Like, think of a cool business model and Sierra's got it, guys. Like, that is amazing. What
Yeah.
brought that forth? Like, going from
Mhm.
being an ag business major to being like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. I love this. Now getting your master's,
Yeah.
going to Wyoming and teaching, like doing the coaching, and
Yes.
then now you're here. What kind of sparked the
Yep. So
birth
when I
of
when I
your
left Ohio
business?
State, it was my time to graduate. I thought I was going to go right into grad school, but turns out there was an opportunity to coach meat judging teams at the University of Wyoming. And by no means had I been the best meat judger at Ohio State, which made me confident. It's like, well, if I could also understand where students may not have meat science at the forefront of their mind, but then I can get people excited about meat science who didn't even know that it existed, then that's my niche. And so I went to the University of Wyoming to coach meats teams and manage their branded meats program. And it was there from 2017 through 2021 that we encountered COVID. And so rather than taking my meat judgers to the large meat processing plants that we were normally practicing in, preparing for contests, we were then traveling to the smaller meat processing facilities that were in our local community. And during COVID, I was having conversations with the guys and the gals that were running those shops and letting us come in and practice. And I was asked, it's like, hey, how are y'all doing? And I'm like, we're doing great. Business has never been better. Folks have never been more excited to bring in their beef, pork, lamb to have it processed. People are curious about locally, processed meats. They want access to fresh local meats. So business is great. However, we are having a hard time finding and retaining skilled labor. And we ourselves are just almost burnout to the point of, how do we keep our people happy, because we are an essential business. And so having those conversations with these meat processors got my wheels turning, where, okay, if I could become a better butcher myself, and I can already train college students to get excited about meat science and meat judging, and I know, the primals and the breaks, and I know enough cuts to be dangerous, and quality grading and yield grading. I have all the big pieces. But if I could become a better butcher, I bet I could train other people who might be able to fill this gap in this, this skilled labor shortage that we have for butchers. And so Butcher Solutions was kind of formed by my own quest to want to be a better butcher. And so I started Googling, where can I go to get, a crash course on just a little bit more in depth, a little bit more precise meat cutting. And what I was finding on the internet was there wasn't really anything that was quick, fast, and dirty for somebody who was already a pretty decent butcher that just wanted to get better. I could go to some fancy culinary school in Chicago, or I could go to Canada to a 6-month apprenticeship program, but there just wasn't anybody or anyone that I could just real quick learn just a couple more skills from. And so then that became my thought. It's like, it'd be cool when I finish this job at the University of Wyoming, whatever that time is, maybe I would go and work at a butcher school. And so then I tried to find more butcher schools. And again, they just didn't really exist. Now, I don't want to be naive and say that Butcher Solutions is the only traveling butcher school, but it kind of seems that that might be the case. And so I was like, well, what if I just start a butcher school? And so from there, that's where I was like, well, if I can't find a place where I can quickly become a better butcher, then I think it's time for grad school. And I had had a mentor from Certified Angus Beef, Dr. Phil Bass. He had been there when I had an internship, and then he had also jumped to the University of Idaho and had grad students there. And so I'd reached out to him. I knew he was great on the academic side, and he was also great and well in touch with the meat industry. He had beef cattle himself, and so he really understood what our livestock producers are trying to achieve with their meat products, as well as what academia is trying to accomplish with research and new discoveries in the meat realm. And so that's sometimes the hard thing when we're looking at how does the academic research actually serve the end livestock producer or the end community. And so I wanted to make sure that I was going to go to a program where I'm going to learn to be a really good butcher, but I'm also going to know how to serve livestock producers in the future. And so when I went to grad school, had a really cool master's project working with innovative carcass fabrication of beef cuts. So I got to find all these new beef cuts and find new ways to cut them, because sometimes our butchers, we have a lot of names for meat cuts, and they're sometimes fairly confusing. It's like, how is the Delmonico steak different from the ribeye? It's like, well, let me tell you. Where does the flat iron come from? What is the sirloin tender, which was what my research was on? So there are so many different things that we can do with meat science just with the cutting side. And so as I was going through my master's program, in the back of my mind, I had traveling butcher school. That was there. And yes, I was looking for other job opportunities when I was in grad school and thinking, what might come along or where else could I work? But nothing got me more excited. No other job opportunity, no other place to work got me as excited as the idea of opening a traveling butcher school and filling that void for finding and retaining that skilled labor for the butchers that we already have.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I love that. I love just the idea of like the resilience that you had through that, and then just the fact that like you're like, I'm going to grad school, but this thing is in the back of my head this whole time. Like, this is what I want to do. This is where my passion's going to be. And you obviously are excited about meat science, and you are a light in the industry about meat science. And it is a topic in the agricultural sector that I feel like isn't sometimes talked about enough. Like, we know about certified Angus beef, and we know about like all of these other programs that you can do, or all of like, but it feels very like corporate and high level sometimes. And I know as agricultural producers, every once in a while, I feel like we get a little bit maybe like separated from that. We don't do the best job at educating ourselves and continuing to stay up on that education and continuing to grow our knowledge base about the different cuts of meat. Like, we're all about the feeding programs that produce those really good cuts of meat, but then we're not necessarily asking all of the questions to our butchers or things like that. Because I mean, for a lot of producers, it's, hey, we're raising them and then we just send them on down the road. So that's really awesome that you provide an experience not only for butchers, but for other people in agriculture that just want to learn more and expand and grow. I would love to hear just more about that side of your business too, about like, you're going and teaching people how to cut meat, but you're also like connecting different people in the agricultural sector too.
Thinking about what really gets me excited about my job, cutting demonstrations are really, really fun. And you're so right. That we're the ones that raise the animals every single day, but how quickly we forget that we are also the consumer of that product. And sometimes, again, there are so many different names for these different cuts of meat, and knowing what those cuts are, where they come from on the carcass, how we should cook them. These are all questions that then our consumers are wondering too. And so we as the producer always also have to stay up to speed on that. And so some of the most fun work that I get to do is working with livestock producers and going to conferences or meetings, music festivals, and doing beef, pork, lamb cutting demonstrations and showing people where these meat cuts come from on their carcass. And whether you are very, very new to seeing meat cuts and carcasses broken down, or whether you've been a livestock producer, you've done it yourself, sometimes it's really nice just to have that reminder of, oh yes, this is the difference between where the ribeye comes from versus where it transitions to our loin. And what do we do with all of the muscles and the cuts that come out of the shoulder if we don't really love roasts? How do we turn those into steaks? How can I, make beef jerky out of some of the tougher cuts? Or how can I further process pork to make it a little bit more exciting? So doing cutting demonstrations and working with livestock producers at meetings, cattlemen's association conventions, whatever it might be, Farm Bureau. I get connected with a lot of those folks. There are a lot of tribal communities in Montana as well as throughout the West, where our tribes are processing a lot of wild game on their land or are raising bison. And so how can those tribes attain meat science education to very quickly train folks and then provide a sustainable meat source to people in their communities? So just helping people with meat science education, even if it's a refresher course, is really, really fun. And working with, again, livestock producers to help develop a branded meats program, or to figure out a cut sheet that might work for you, so that then when you take your meat to a processor, what cuts do you expect? Or even if you've read a cut sheet and you don't understand it, it's like, where are these cuts coming from? And why do my sirloins look like this instead of looking like what they do when they come from Texas Roadhouse? Any area of meat science, I'd love to chat with folks on. We could go down wormholes all day, but yeah, you're right that the meat science arena, it kind of gets lost because we know about production, which gets tied in with feeding, genetics, all of that's so super duper important. But then our consumer has all of these questions about, what are the differences in these cattle breeds? And what are the differences in cooking method? And what are the differences in how you're feeding these animals? And not all the time do our producers have time to answer those questions, have whatever avenue that these people are asking the questions, can they connect to them on? And so it's the butcher that is getting asked the questions. And so that really is my goal of training. And it sounds a little odd, but the tagline for Butcher Solutions is building better butchers. Not to say that we have poor butchers in the United States, but I want to create a butcher who knows several different names for these meats cuts and knows how these critters are raised, so that then when the consumer asks the question, we are bridging that gap, because not all the time does that consumer have the access to the person who is raising it. And so if you're training the butcher to be that middle person, to really share the story, to do a great job of creating a high quality meat product, to provide it in a very humane, wholesome, healthful way, but then to also tell the story, wow, it's just opening up a whole new avenue to connecting the consumer with the livestock producer.
Yeah, it's just a really holistic approach to the whole life process of a beef animal or something like that is getting served on your plate. It's really just bridging all of those gaps, answering all of those questions. You kind of mentioned it a little bit before, but I would love to dive a little bit into the education that you do on the producer side, as far as going into the direct-to-consumer beef selling and stuff like that. That they're obviously working with their butchers very closely to get those ideal cuts and get everything that they're looking for to target that audience. But I feel like since the pandemic, we have definitely seen a rise in consumers wanting to buy directly from those ranchers, which is so awesome. But sometimes it's like, okay, as a rancher, that's really daunting, because it's like, okay, you have to have a really great relationship with your butcher. You have to figure out all the back end stuff. You have to do all of these other things that maybe you weren't fully prepared to do before, or you were used to just, offering up a half a beef and being like, hey, call the butcher and figure it out yourself type of thing before. So I would love to hear kind of your insight on that as a butcher, and then also just your education that you do there, if you have any advice that you'd like to give.
Yes. And so this whole premise of our livestock producers are now kind of becoming the butchers since COVID is also another reason that I knew that Butcher Solutions needed to exist. Was during COVID, it was really difficult for our livestock producers to get harvest slots in their small hometown communities, my family included. It used to be that you could call up your butcher and you could get a slot in a week or two, and you could come in and harvest a couple beef or pork or lamb, whatever. And then during COVID, it was impossible. You couldn't get a slot for the next year. And then our customers were like, the beef was a little fat this year, tasted different. It's like, yeah, that critter had to wait a whole extra year, and we were trying to hold him back. And so during that time, the livestock producers were saying, well, there's all of this grant money being offered by the government, the USDA, and we're having a hard time getting our own slots. What if we just build our own facility? What if we use that grant money? We'll just build our own. And then we can provide the facility, and all the livestock producers in our county, we can all come together and we'll just all harvest everything right here, and it'll be great. Well, that actually, it worked. And that's the problem, is that those folks, they got the funding, they built the plant. Well, now it's like they want to go back to being the livestock producer, and they need to run this meat packing plant. And so they're like, well, shoot, now this facility, the doors are going to open in like 2 weeks, and I need a crew. I need somebody who's going to manage. I need, I've got the animals lined up, no problem. It's like, who's the crew going to be? And so that's really like one of the main things that I realized were a lot of the livestock producers were putting the meat industry on their shoulders and saying, great, we are going to provide local protein to folks. However, I don't know how to train a butcher. I don't know who I need. And I want to go back to, working in the feedlot and running cows or pig or sheep or whatever it might have been. And so helping those livestock producers, maybe it's holding a hiring event to help them find people to work there, getting them connected with somebody who can be the manager. Maybe it's just sitting down with their cowboys and their crew, and having like a little meat science 101 or a beef 101. I've done that with some producers here in Montana, where it's, a family of a daughter who sells the beef direct to consumers in a store. It's the son who works in the feedlot, and the dad who kind of manages all of it. We sat down with the three of them and did a beef 101. There's also another family here in Montana that wanted to start their own branded beef program, and they're now selling beef to restaurants here in Montana. And they also wanted a beef 101, or to learn a little bit. It's like, where's the weight going when I'm taking it to the processor? How is that carcass shrinking? Or where are some of the pitfalls I should be concerned about? And so helping folks understand just a little bit of that start to how do you get started with the branded meats program? How do you develop a customer base? How do you distribute your product? Again, I help my family on our freezer beef business, but perhaps like, even if I don't have the answers to every single step of the way, I can help be the liaison between the meat science world to help somebody get connected with somebody who's in distribution, or is Butcher Box the way it'll go, or do you want to direct sell to your consumer, or do you need a federally inspected facility, or is custom exempt working for you? And so what do those words even mean? And so just kind of helping livestock producers get started selling direct to consumer and get connected with some of the resources that they might need to handle that really daunting process of wanting to sell direct. Because again, at the end of the day, they want to be the ones that are raising the livestock animals, and they just want help finding somebody who can be their operations or their distribution or their customer service person, so then they can go back to just raising livestock.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like such an important point to remember, that we all got into the agricultural operation and life for a certain reason, or kind of like you said in your intro, that you were like, I knew myself that I wasn't going to go back to the ranch and go raise livestock, but I wanted to find my other niche. There are some people that are like, yep, I would rather be on the ranch, like doing the do rather than like out managing people. And that's completely fine. That's where people like you come in, or things like that help bring on the employees that you need, the infrastructure that you need, the regulations, all of the stuff that I look at it and I'm like, no. Next year's project? Question mark? 2025 goal?
That's crazy, because and I think that's my big takeaway to young people that are in agriculture, in any industry, honestly, is we need to be honest with ourselves about what we actually like and what we're actually really good at doing. Yes. Because that was a really hard thing for me to stand back and say, I don't think that I'm going to enjoy raising the cattle every day. I love weaning. I love vaccinating. I love, working cattle. I loved being in 4-H and FFA, but like thinking about, am I going to work outside, rain, snow, shine, raising cattle? Like I don't think I have the passion for hauling hay the way that my sister does. And then I look at the other side of the industry when I was, having other internships working with, you know, public relations. It's like I felt like a broken record sharing the same nutritional information over and over again. And it's like, man, it's really fun to have this office job and to get to go and meet a bunch of people every day. But man, I don't know if working with social media and website design and that side of the industry is for me. It's like, darn it, where do I fit? And so even now, it's like I found my niche. It's like I get to work with cold, wet concrete and knives. It's like that's great. Not everybody likes working with blood and fat, and it's a mess. But not a lot of people would want to do that. But now I'm realizing it's like, well, shoot, if I'm gonna get in front of folks, I need somebody who's gonna run social media. I know for a fact that there is somebody out there who is finishing an ag communications degree who has zero interest in working in the blood and the fat and the bone that is meat science. But I bet they would make one heck of an Instagram reel, and that they would do a great job in helping me tell this story in a way that when I am, I've got my gloves on, I can't handle my phone. My phone's dirty. And so my Instagram feed is not super robust. And I need to find more awesome podcasts like this one and find more people to talk to and share the news. And when it be there, be somebody out there who just loves sharing ag stories and isn't necessarily the person who's going to be working in the meat plant every day, but wants to tell the story of agriculture. And so again, bringing all this together, we as young people, we just have to be honest with ourselves that we don't have to do it all. And we don't have to know everything that there is about each sector of the ag industry because it's just too big. And we each have our own unique skills, and it is okay and humbling to just admit when something is not in our wheelhouse, because what I can't do, Lauren can do. And what I enjoy, Lauren might not. And because I love finding people that have different interests than me, because I'm like, great, they love to do that. I don't have to. And that is just the most exciting thing when you meet somebody who fills in the gaps that you have.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It is the most humbling experience, but also the most necessary experience as a young person in ag to sit down and be like, okay, what do I actually enjoy? Do I like going out there and pulling calves in the snow and rain? No. That I love that my dad and brother love doing that, but like
No,
that's not for me. That's just I'm gonna admit it. Sorry guys. Like if I need to, I will. But like that's not where I drive my passion every single day. But that is some people's passion. Like Sierra said, some people love communication and social media. Some people love picking up a knife and being on the butcher floor. And that's just where we all have our strengths within the ag industry and the diversity that this ag industry brings that is so important. Because it's like you can do a huge diversity of things within the industry and still serve the ag industry. You don't have to like do communications outside of ag.
right.
You can do communications within ag, or you can go and do like XYZ projects that maybe you would think that like ag doesn't need those, but I'm sure ag does, or an interpretation of those this industry needs, or things like that, which I think is just so important. I would love to hear your insight on just kind of like the world of meat science and butchers and the future of meat science, as like these young individuals are going to college or expanding on their knowledge and things like that, kind of what that's looking like, and your advice to them of like, hey, go into meat science. Like you don't just have to go into general ag sci, like
Yeah.
you can go into meat science or something like
Which
that, and it's
what
a
I
really cool
love
path.
about meat science is that, yes, we all love meat and we're all excited about just the meat sector of things. But we're bringing in folks who are really great with microbiology, with engineering, with robotics, with let's see, the real basic true blue sciences, with communications. When I was coaching meats judging teams, I always had this dream to recruit somebody who was in ag engineering or just engineering in general, because as folks are building our meat processing facilities, they need to understand, it's like, where should this door go? How should this rail operate? And what's the layout that makes the most sense? And so I always wanted to have somebody who was a meats judger and go through that process. It's like, well, if I can, they might not ever work in a meat plant, but they might build one. Same way, we've got folks who are really excited about packaging technology, and we need them in distribution. It's like, how do we build a vacuum sealer, or how do we keep fresh meat color longer, and how do we maintain water holding capacity? That all holds up into like true molecular chemistry. Or you could be like me, who I liked science. I really did. Was I amazing at it? No, I passed organic chemistry, whatever. But I was really excited just to learn scientific muscles and to cut meat. And maybe you want to be an agricultural educator, and having some of that meat science background and taking a meat science class so that then you could coach a meats judging team, or you could work in extension. As an extension educator, your livestock producers are going to ask you questions about how to direct market your meat, or about feeding rations, about animal welfare. How does everything that livestock producer impact the end product being meat? So taking a meat science class, again, we've seen the cuts before, but just to know where they come from on the carcass, how you can study animal welfare in meat science. That's a whole nother sector. It's amazing how pretty much the entire animal science community really you can find a niche within the meat sciences. And how does a lot of people who even end up going into animal science and want a degree in animal science end up doing, if they're looking for a master's or a PhD, those further degrees probably have a meat science component to them. Most of them have something that's terminal. If you are a dairy person, all dairy cattle have a change of career at their end of the life, at the end of the road. And so even if you're a dairy person, we are switching careers on those cattle at the end of the line. So understanding everything within how meat science plays a role in the livestock industry is incredible. Because at the end of the day, if you're talking to a seed stock producer, or anybody who's just raising the breeding stock, you can ask them. It's like, well, what do you raise? And like, well, purebred Angus, or I raise Berkshire hogs, or whatever, or I feed out whatever it might be. Nope, you're raising meat. At the end of the day, there are 20 different steps that go through the line, but you have a role in meat. Even if somebody is interested in hauling pigs. And I met a gal the other day who, her son, it's like, he just wants to haul pigs. He just wants to drive truck and haul pigs. Well, you know what? We need to understand how wind speed and temperature outside affects animal welfare of those pigs on the truck, and stocking density, and how long can those pigs be on the truck, and what causes bruising in our larger beef animals from trucks and shipping, and how long can those critters be on those trucks before shrinks happen. It's like, oh my gosh, how is meat science so closely wound in anything to do with our livestock critters? I had even considered a master's in human nutrition, because I was thinking about, it's like every breed association would love to have a nutritionist on their board to work with their consumers. The pork board, Certified Angus Beef, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the Lamb Board, they all want to make sure that, yes, we are sharing the correct nutritional information with our consumer, but who does a consumer trust? Maybe not always the producer, maybe not always the butcher. They trust their doctors, though. And so even if you are interested in being in nutrition, dietetics, a doctoral role, meat science is perfectly acceptable to understand how muscles are functioning, how nutrient dense or rich, what new research could come from fats versus proteins versus amino acids. There's just endless possibilities.
There really are. There's so many just
Mhm.
amazing, endless possibilities that meat science does offer. And I think it is so cool to see something that if you had asked me when I was going through college what I thought about meat science, I probably would have said, yeah, the meat lab is really cool. They like do some really cool things in there, but like you're not going to catch me putting a
Right.
hairnet on and going and hanging out in there. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, like it is so cool to see something that I don't want to offend anyone by saying this, but almost an industry that was kind of like starting to just like the independent butchers were starting to disappear and fail and all of these things pre pandemic to see like a new light be brought to it and just
Yeah.
the industry be built up again and just see some really, really amazing things happen in the meat science sector of the industry and just
Right,
the growth that
because
comes
let's
along with
let's
it.
think about this. Like being a butcher, it's not glamorous. It's not. It's cold, wet concrete. You wear a hairnet, a hard net, or a hard hat. It's not glamorous. But let's look at what Italy, Germany, France, Spain, these other countries. Being a butcher is this artisanal work of art. Their butcher shops are a lot more fancy, for a lack of better word. They're really well lit. They are really consumer facing. And to be a butcher in those countries is something that, yes, you are an apprentice for several years, learning this really technical trade, and you are a pivotal point in the community. You are an essential piece of who this community is and the kind of meat that you serve and provide, and all of your recipes are really sacred. And let's look at the meat industry in the United States. We are tasked with feeding a lot of people a lot of protein, not just within our own country, but all around the world. So there is a huge demand for large scale meat processing facilities. We have to have them. And I love going into those facilities and seeing how efficient they are at providing high quality protein very quickly at a reasonable price. We also need local shops that provide a service to families like my own, where we sell, maybe 20, 30 beef every year, and we want to serve, provide meat to our friends and our neighbors and our acquaintances. And we want people to have access to local meats where they know their butcher and they know their livestock producer. They know the quality, whatever it might be. We need both. We need small, we need large. The problem with both of those small packing facilities and large packing facilities is that they're not glamorous. They're not as beautiful as in other countries. And so that's where folks feel a little conflicted and a little concerned about, should I be concerned about how my meat products are being raised? It's like, well, the reason that there's not a lot of windows in these facilities is that light can oxidize meat products and cause differences in the color. And so it's not that we're trying to hide our meat products. It's that sometimes light could cause some funky discoloration. Sometimes windows are really hard to clean and dust can get in, and so it's easier to clean a building that is just four concrete walls. And so it's like there are many reasons behind why the US meat industry is the way it is, both appearance wise and in function. There is a reason that it needs to function the way that it does, both on small and large scale. But is it glamorous? Is it recruiting students the way that, is it prestigious to be a butcher? No, it's not. And so thinking about how do we get more people into meat science? How do we get people excited? It has to start younger, and helping young people who are 4-H, FFA, do a carcass contest, and having counties bring back carcass contests is one of the best things we can do, because yeah, I mean, having a big fancy show steer that looks awesome on the hoof is amazing. What we were seeing in Ohio, though, is that those big fluffy cows, they were yielding like yield grade 4s select carcasses. So it's like, when you actually dive into the meat, some of these like little podunk, farms and ranches are creating some really high quality beef. And so when young people could see a carcass contest and actually see the critter hanging on the rail, it teaches a lot about life and death, but it also teaches about why we're raising our animals and how we're feeding them and why it's important to walk them every day. And both from a muscling building standpoint and, a low stress, like when we get to the county fair and we don't freak out, and so helping young people get interested in meat early is great. 4-H and FFA programs, great. Because by the time we get to college, taking a meat science class, again, meat science might not be until the end of your agricultural, degree or any degree. Sometimes that coursework, it just gets buried under general education. And so again, and that's why Butcher Solutions exists, is because sometimes if a young person knew that the trades were really having a regeneration here, and we need more plumbers, we need more electricians, we need more butchers, and they are really good paying jobs. We need them to exist. If you're not a person who wants to go to a 4-year university, you don't have to. Or if you're a person who does, great. We can dive as deep as you want to. And so the trades really are having a moment. And I'm hoping that meat science in the United States can kind of take a page out of some other countries' books. And in terms of, let's make butchery a really unique trade again. And I mean, if we think about where Denver's at, somebody could really love to go to Denver and be this artsy butcher in a way that in Livingston, Montana, they might not get that artsy feel, but maybe you could. So maybe open your own shop and let's make butchery something that's, the forefront of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just something that we don't think about it. We compare different agricultural markets to the European markets or the Australian markets or New Zealand markets all the time and just look at them from a very basis of the animal themselves. But sometimes we don't look at what are these other countries doing that is actually maybe advantaging the agricultural industry as a whole. Because you know what? If butchery gets cool again, if it is glamorous for these people and stuff like that, for these young adults to be like, yeah, I want to be a butcher, or I want to work in meat science. I want to work in meat science innovation. I want to make these meat science places glamorous again. What is kind of your advice or takeaways from what other countries are doing, or not even maybe necessarily what other countries are doing, but where does meat science need to go in the future to continue expanding? The young people that are listening to this, what do they need to be doing right now that is going to help meat science continue to grow and just everything that
what's
it is?
interesting, so I'm actually a team member for Butchers of America, which is Team USA in the Butcher Olympics, which is something so strange and crazy. But there is a Butcher Olympics. It's called the World Butcher Challenge. It will be held in Paris, France, March 2025. So if you watch the Olympics at all and you saw where they did the Olympic weightlifting, that is the arena where the Olympic butchers will be competing this coming March. And so I did have to try out for that team. And so I am competing in March at the World Butcher Challenge. And I'm learning a lot from the other folks that have made the team. And I compete as an individual, and then there are some other folks who are competing in a team competition. And we're all from all over the country. A lot of those gals and gentlemen, they own their own meat processing facilities. I don't own my own. I own a traveling butcher school. And so it's really cool to get other butchers together who are living in California, New York City, Colorado, Montana. We're all over the country and coming together and learning different meat cuts from each other, learning about what sells in New York does not sell in Montana, just kind of learning different markets and getting excited, for each other as butchers and kind of cheering each other on. But realizing that butchery competitions are really, really cool and people think that they're really fun and people like to go and watch them. And so I think they allowed me to be on the team. Whatever. Because of, I am the meat scientist of the group. And so they're really, sometimes they'll point to a muscle and be like, what is that? Or, how does this muscle function? Why does this muscle look like this one? And that one's just a little bit more tough. It's like, well, let me tell you. And so even working with other butchers, there's a lot of reciprocation that happens. And so the meat science, which is, truly let's go get a bachelor's or a master's, something deeper than just, let's be a butcher, is really fun to then share some of that deeper knowledge with other people who are teaching me how to make these really clean cuts and how to, tie 6 different butcher knots and how to create a really chefy looking product. So even within the butchery community, we are all very different kinds of butchers. So I do think that butcher competitions is something that could be a really easy way to get communities interested in butchery, because then you see people come out and they whip out a whole carcass and they're like very quickly like creating these really beautiful cuts. That's going to get a lot of folks, like whether you are a young person thinking about your next move, it's like that could get somebody interested in culinary science or wanting to be a chef, or somebody interested in, I need a summer job. I'm just going to go and work at the grocery store and work at the meat counter, which is a great job. It could also be a great idea for somebody who's looking for a change in career, or a retirement plan. It's like, wow, like I always thought it was cool to be a butcher. And now like I see these people creating these really beautiful things, and my wife or my husband needs me out of the house. And so I'm going to go be a butcher, or, whatever it might be. And so getting actual meat products out in front of people and doing some really creative things. I mean, show and tell is the tried and true way to get anybody excited about anything. And so, more butcher competitions would be great, of which, I mean, I am a competitive person. So anytime we can compete in something, I'm all about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I need the like tea about being on in a US Olympian team for like the World Butcher competitions. What does that look like? I know this is like maybe a little bit of a side tangent, but like I need to know. So I know my listeners need to know.
Yeah.
What are you going to be doing in Paris
the World Butcher
next
Challenge
year?
it started as just a backyard competition between Australia and New Zealand, wanting to know who had the better butchers. And it's held every 2 years, and it's just grown exponentially. So they've just added more countries. So the United States competed for the first time in 2018 in Belfast. And then they had such a great experience that then they wanted to host it in Sacramento in 2022, I believe. And so anyway, so the United States just like quickly became, it's like, wow, we need to be present at the World Butcher Challenge and bring a team. And so I think I learned about it from Instagram. I think I was targeted by Instagram. I don't know how, but that they were holding tryouts. And so the tryout process was pretty intense, because the competition's kind of intense. So in the actual competition, there is a team category, and then there is a young butcher category. Young butchers being, those of us who are under 30. And so young butchers, we compete as individuals, and then the team unit compete as a team. The team has 3.5 hours to break down a side of beef, a side of pork, a full lamb, and 5 chickens. The junior competition, where it's just me competing as an individual, we have 2.5 hours, a little bit less time, to break down a beef subprimal. So our subprimal is a top sirloin, a pork middle. So that's the whole pork loin and the belly all connected, and the sirloin connected, a half a lamb, and 2 chickens. So a little less time, still a lot of meat products. And your goal is to create as many innovative meat products as you can. So just, create a really beautiful meats display. And they can be cuts that are unique to your country. They can be something new and chefy that you're trying. Every individual has a theme. I can't disclose my theme, but you can find that out in March. But yeah, you have a theme, and it's how well can you pull off your theme, and how safe are you as a butcher, and how clean are your cuts, and how clean are you? Because thinking about when a customer walks into your shop, do they want to see this a nice pristine butcher in their getup, or do you want to see them covered in blood and fat? It's like, oh no, like a clean butcher is a good butcher. So there's all these metrics that are being judged, and each country submits a judge, and so it's not just what would sell well in the host country. It's what would sell all the way around the world. What meat cuts are really eye appealing, or and it's this, again, a reciprocation of meats ideas from countries all over the place. So this competition, it's 2 days. So I'll compete on the first day as the young butcher, and then day 2 are the team competition, the team element. And so each country submits 6 people, and they kind of break up into what their skills are. So one person's really good at breaking down the carcass. One person's really good at taking those big cuts and then turning them into steaks and roasts. Another person might be really good at grinding and making sausage or really unique grind recipes. Somebody else might be the garnish person who, again, is just making everything look really, really chefy and beautiful and like the finished product that would go into meat's case. So again, even within meat science, we all play a different role, which is kind of tricky. What I'm struggling with, or, we even practice. I go to Utah every other month to practice. And in my practices, I have to realize it's like, wow, I'm a really good butcher at breaking down the carcass and creating these cuts. I've never worked in a retail case to make them like super pretty and presentable and garnished. And so even I'm learning some culinary skills along the way. So anybody out there who's interested, feel free to follow Butchers of America on Instagram, follow the World Butchers Challenge, and March 30th of 2025, you'll be able to hop on YouTube and watch the World Butcher Challenge from France, Paris, France. Yeah.
That is so cool. I genuinely before this didn't even know this was a thing. So like I'm geeking out over here. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Way to like represent agriculture. That is so cool. I cannot wait to see this. It's truly just a testament to the fact that like the butcher industry, the meat science industry is not dying. It is growing. It is evolving. There are cool ways to get involved. There are cool things that you can do as a young individual coming into this industry. If you have a passion for like bringing that beef product to the consumers and different things like that, like there is a place for you and there's a place for you to make it cool. And like, so even if
my first exposure to a cooking competition or anything, when I was in college, we started a collegiate cattle club, and we had a Buckeyes for Beef event, which was like just an on-campus beef education. You get out there and you talk to folks. And on day 2 of this event, we would always get all of the ag clubs together, and we had a take the state competition where we would tailgate for a football party or a football game, and we just get a bunch of grills out right on the main strip there, and we'd provide beef for each of the teams. And it was kind of like like a Master Chef or something competition, and each round was random. People wouldn't know what's in their box. Iron Chef, that's right. And it would get so many people just walking by, like all gung ho about it. And so now, like,
that's so cool.
All of my friends are like, "Of course you're in some kind of butchery competition." And like starting in college, we loved our butchery competitions, and so it's like it doesn't just any way to get people, college students, young folks, random football tailgaters excited about meat. It's like, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's do it. If you're a young person listening to this, like find a way to make meat science cool, and like at your local college or in your local small town or things like that. Like these don't all have to be college events or anything that you're hosting. It can be just a small town tailgate. Like maybe you get in contact with your local butcher and you're doing something really cool for your small town high school team before one of their like regional events or something like that. Like great fundraiser.
You give the meat
great fundraiser opportunity. Like look at us just exactly. Look at this. Look at us just spewing out ideas for all of you guys. This is
like $20
this is
to
awesome.
enter, and then you go to a cool grilling competition.
Yeah. Exactly. Look at that. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it so much. What, just like to the young people out there that are listening to this, we have some older people listen to this that are above like in their like 30s, 40s, 50s, but the majority of our audience is a younger generation, in college, getting ready for college. What is your advice that you have for them kind of like looking at meat science as an option for them to go into and just kind of what that looks like, as an agricultural industry? You don't have to go into just general ag sci. You can go into meat
and
science
maybe
and stuff like
just
that.
a message to folks in general in agriculture. As somebody who I went to all the career fairs, and I had 4 different internships throughout college. Internships are amazing. Maybe that's point number 1 is do internships, because it helps you learn what you do like and what you don't like. And it gives you, 2 or 3 months to really experiment with that company, for you to try them on, for them to try you on, and to see if it's a fit. And even for folks listening, if you have a company, take the time to have an intern and give them real projects, something, because like, young folks, we have good ideas. And so making the most of an internship experience is, I just can't harp on the value of that enough. I'm pretty sure I got hired. Well, I know for a fact that I got hired directly out of my bachelor's degree and was, teaching at a university because of the diversity of internships that I had, because that counts as industry experience. And so for folks who are like, man, like, should I have 10 years or 5 years of experience, or should I have a higher degree? How do I, but if I'm getting that degree, then I don't have the experience. If you have internships, that counts as the experience. So anyway, do internships, but also entrepreneurship isn't talked about very much within the agricultural sector. It's like all of, the certified Angus beef brand started as an idea in Ohio. Butcher Solutions was just something that I realized, it's like, after a couple of Google searches, I'm just not finding what I think should be out there. And I think there's so much of that our generation just doesn't realize that entrepreneurship is possible. And so as somebody, it's like, I went to the career fairs and I talked to all the folks and I tried the internships, and I had a job I have a job, but I mean, you can go and at any time you can work for anybody at any point. But if you're not finding something that excites you as much as what's in your own brain, it is okay to create it. And it is okay to just kind of be the bootstrap entrepreneur that says, let's try this for a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's going to take some time. And that's something I'm giving myself the grace to understand, is that, wow, it's like the phone is ringing. This is working, but let's give ourselves some time to grow into it. But if you have an idea that's in your own brain, taking an entrepreneurship class in college or even in high school, trying to pay attention to those business classes. That was something that my dad always told me. And that's why I went and I got a business degree first. He's like, if I could go back and do it again as a farmer, he's like, I would have taken more business classes and I would have paid more attention. Now, I do think that I slept through most of my undergrad career through those business classes. So by no means am I the best business person. But I think just having that knowledge of, hey, like, I have an idea and I can read a book on how to be an entrepreneur, or I can go and I can meet somebody who's also a mentor, or somebody else who built their own business, and I can ask enough questions of people in my community, and I can make this work. Don't be afraid of your own ideas in your head, because that's what's going to move agriculture forward.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was so well put. So well put. And on that note, I would love to start kind of rounding out the podcast with just what your one general piece of advice is for the next generation
I
of
would
agriculture.
have to say that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So whatever you're going to do, I mean, do it wholeheartedly. And so again, you don't have to be great at everything, and you don't have to fill every void in agriculture, but just know what you like and do it. Just do it. Like, we have to get started somewhere. Sometimes the hardest part of our day is just getting started. But if you go into it with enthusiasm and with belief that it's going to work, that's what agriculture needs right now, is folks that are just really excited about something quirky and really, really niche. And so for me, that's meat science. And I hope that this conversation today got some other people also just a little bit more jazzed about the meat world.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that if you guys went and listened to this on a podcast platform, you hop over to YouTube or something just so you can see Sierra's excitement. Like, I know you can feel it, but like, see her excitement about meat science and about agriculture. Cause y'all, it has me jazzed. It is the mid afternoon over here when we're recording, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go, like, start a whole nother day. She's got me jazzed, and I'm not even in the meat science world, guys. And I'm ready to go. So I hope that this conversation just left you guys with so much inspiration for the meat science world and just inspiration in general, and just got you excited about agriculture and excited about the future, excited about your own plans for your own niche in agriculture and all of those different things. Sierra, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wealth of knowledge, for talking away for an hour with our audience just about everything meat science and everything entrepreneurship in the butcher world. And we will be cheering you on come March. So everyone, make sure you go follow Sierra, go follow the Butcher's account, all of those different things. We will have them linked below, and make sure you tune into YouTube on March 30th to go watch Sierra kick some butt over in Paris for the Butcher
Wonderful.
competition.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, guys. And thank you so much for coming on. And to all the listeners out there, we will see y'all next week on another episode of The Next Generation. Have a good one.